That's coming through.
So everybody can see that, yes, hopefully.
Yes.
Good. Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. It's so fabulous to be here with you all today and to be able to talk to so many schools at the same time. It's brilliant. So thank you very much for joining me. As Chris said, I'm the Engineering Director for Merlin. He gave a little bit of an insight into what that means, but I shall go over that in a little bit more detail so you can see what that means. But first of all, I thought I'd start with just a positioning question to get everybody to think about what they think an engineer is. And I've spoken about this a lot at various colleges and schools over the years. And generally, these are the sort of images that we come up with. So, you know, the guy that comes around the house to fix your washing machine, or perhaps a chap that's fixing your car, generally getting down and dirty and perhaps a little bit greasy in a pair of overalls. I'm here to tell you that that's not all that an engineer is. That is a mechanic, and there are lots of people doing these incredibly valuable jobs. But as an engineer, you can do so much more. And I'm going to tell you my background and my career story so that you can see if that's the type of engineering you might like to do. So, the Group Engineering Director of Merlin Entertainment, that means that I cover over 120 theme parks across 4 continents. So the things that you'll see in the UK are Blackpool Tower, Alton Towers, the London Eye, Legoland at Windsor. We also have some Legoland Discovery Centres in Birmingham and Manchester you might have seen. The dungeons, so London Dungeon, Edinburgh Dungeon, and we have them all around the world. Madame Tussauds in London you will have seen. And we also have some fairly weird things like ski resorts in Australia and lots of other things. So what does that look like on a world map? Those are all of the attractions that I sit across in terms of engineering and technical delivery. And you'll see it's quite a big remit, and it covers lots of very unique things, which I will go through with a few pictures shortly. But I didn't start my career as the Engineering Director of Merlin Entertainment. In fact, I've only been doing this for just short of 3 years now. I started out in the Royal Air Force. I left school and went to university. I studied mechanical engineering and was sponsored by the Air Force through my degree, and then joined the Air Force as an engineering officer for some 23 years. And in that time, I was responsible for the engineering delivery and standards on very many types of aircraft. I'm sure you'll all recognise the red arrows there in the top left, but also some of the bigger aircraft. So we've got the C-130, the Hercules, which transports people and stuff around the world. And we've also got some other platforms other than air transport. I looked after the reconnaissance and surveillance aircraft, so the spy planes, if you like. And that was at Royal Air Force Waddington. And they had all sorts of things, some of which were a bit more secret and I can't tell you about them, but others are more well known. So you'll see the top right hand corner there, that's the Reaper, and that is an unmanned aerial vehicle. So it's remotely piloted. So the pilots all sit at RAF Waddington, and these fly across the operational theatres, so the war zones out in Iraq and Afghanistan at the time that I was at Waddington. And also in the centre there, you'll see the E3 Sentry. And that big thing on the top that looks a bit like a Smartie, that's a radar. So that looks down below the aircraft and it can see vehicle movements underneath. So it can patrol across the sea and see perhaps pirates out around Somalia, or it can be in a war zone looking at transport movements there. Slightly more interesting perhaps is the bottom right hand side, and that's an aircraft called the Sentinel. And that bump you see underneath the bottom of the aircraft, that is also a radar, but that can actually see over the top of the hill. So rather than line of sight, it can go across hills, and importantly, it can show you differences. So it could fly over the desert one day and it would map the desert, then it could fly over it the next day and it could see if there'd been any movement. So if anybody had buried an improvised explosive device or a bomb. So really, really great to support our troops out in war zones. So that was fabulous. I decided to leave the Air Force, and when I left the Air Force and I was looking for another engineering role, I obviously thought immediately of aircraft, but interestingly, I decided to go to Gatwick Airport, and rather than engineering the aircraft, I was actually engineering the airport. So if any of you have been through Gatwick, you'll probably know the little shuttle train that goes from North Terminal to South Terminal, those sort of things, all of the terminal itself, the air traffic control tower, and that picture at the top right-hand side there, that's a high power distribution board. So that's an electrical installation at the airport. And so every single piece of infrastructure, from the runway to the toilets even in the terminal, was underneath my remit. And that was a very different form of engineering. So started out studying mechanical engineering, did aeronautical engineering, so all of the aeroplanes and things in the Air Force, and then onto the airport itself and its buildings, infrastructure, electrical engineering, lots of different types of engineering there. I then got approached by Merlin Entertainment, who wanted to set up a new role to look across engineering at all of their theme parks and attractions. And of course, that sounded quite exciting. So I decided to come for that job. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of the types of things that I get to look at the engineering behind, here are some pictures for you. So this is the largest wooden roller coaster in Europe, and this is called Colossus, and it's at Hyde Park. And that lift there, so you'll see the roller coaster car going up the lift, that's over 100 meters. So it's the tallest wooden roller coaster in Europe. Very exciting. Then down at the bottom there, this is actually the bottom of Blackpool Tower. So this is a circus installation, which is underneath the tower. Some of you might have visited it, but this was put in the Victorian age. So this is very, very old engineering. And the thing that you see there that looks like a fountain and a pool is actually the place where the circus performers do their performance. And at the end of the performance, the floor sinks down, this fountain rises up and it floods and turns into this magical musical fountain. So very extraordinary and quite unique. We also have many hotels. Some of you might have been to Legoland Windsor, and at all of our Legoland parks we have what we call castle hotels, so hotels that look like castles, and you're sort of embedded in sort of the world of princesses and wizards in this castle. And so we have lots of these around the world, which my teams have to maintain. We also have lots of water rides. So this is a rapids boat rides. We have these in many of our parks, but in the UK we have them at Thorpe Park and up at Alton Towers. We've also got one at Legoland Windsor, which is slightly different, but just as good. And of course, we have our Lego models. And this particular teddy bear is in Legoland, Japan. And he is over 6 feet high, so he's bigger than most people. And you can just imagine the sort of engineering and technical understanding and calculations that need to be done to be able to make a model that size that people can actually sort of touch and climb on. So very difficult to understand that. And this is actually a hydraulic pack, which is about the size of 2 cars put on top of each other, just to give you some idea of perspective. And this hydraulic pack runs the launch roller coaster. We have one at Thorpe Park, which is Stealth, which you may have seen, which goes up and over, so it goes up into the air 30 meters vertically and then comes straight back down. Or there's Rita Queen of Speed, which is the one at Alton Towers, which launches you to 100 kilometers per second in the space of 2.3 seconds. So it's very fast. This is the Blackpool Tower Ballroom, which you will have no doubt seen on Strictly Come Dancing if some of you watched that. And of course here the technical challenges are very different because it's very old, aged infrastructure, beautiful building with very ornate cornicing around the roof there. So that ceiling installation is really complicated and very difficult to maintain in good condition. This is a lift. If any of you have been to London Dungeons, there's a boat ride within the dungeons, and the boats go onto this lift and then get lifted 5 meters in the air to continue along their water ride, but on a different level. So again, lots of hydraulics to consider in there, lots of engineering. Blackpool Tower itself, which I'm sure many of you will have seen. And of course, the London Eye, which is iconic. And if any of you watch the fireworks the New Year, we put fireworks all around the Eye every single New Year's Eve. And that's really great fun. And finally, this is one of our roller coasters, quite an iconic roller coaster, the Smiler, with the most loops, 14 loops. And that is something which has got an awful lot of technical challenge behind it. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of the sort of breadth of things that I look after. Sea life installations I haven't really talked about, but I'm sure you can imagine the amount of difficulty there is in having sharks in a large aquarium, and we have these all around the world. We have over 30 sea life centres around the globe. And the ski resorts I mentioned before, and this is a ski lift for a ski resort in Australia. So they do have mountains in Australia and they do ski. And we've had to replace some of the ski infrastructure there just recently. We also have some high rope courses and treetop walks in Australia, and the cantilever. So this is a technical installation where you have a support on one side and then you have an arm which goes out a very long way unsupported. That's called a cantilever, and that's really quite exciting to be up in amongst the treetops in the forest in Australia. And we also have some quite high-tech virtual reality installations now. So we have the Ghost Train at Thorpe Park, but this particular picture is of Galactica. And you can just imagine some of the challenges with integrating a virtual reality headset with the motion of a roller coaster, and making sure that people don't feel ill because of not being able to see exactly where they're going on the roller coaster. And they're in this particular example in Galactica, they're in a world of space, if any of you have been on it. So yeah, very exciting. Okay, so my engineering journey is nothing to do with the pictures that I showed you right at the beginning of the guy in the greasy overall. It's very much about maintenance delivery. It's about looking after teams. It's about looking after things, pieces of equipment, and making sure that they work for people to either enjoy or to use. I went from aeronautical through Gatwick Airport and the building, civils and infrastructure. And now in Merlin, as I've shown you, there's such a breadth of stuff that I cover that it's hugely exciting and interesting. But engineering can take you there. Whatever form of engineering you want to study, the basics of engineering are exactly that. You can apply it to anything. So don't be worried about the type of engineering you may or may not want to do. Just think about the exciting possibilities that are there in front of you. So what do you need to do if you want to be an engineer? First of all, you need to pick the right school subjects. So when you get to choose your GCSEs and maybe A-levels, if you go on to that, you need to be sticking to the science, technology, engineering, and maths, and making sure that you don't opt out of those subjects too early if you think you might want to be an engineer. And you can either go a practical way, so through an apprenticeship, which is more hands-on and maybe on the tools, or a theoretical way, so go to university and do a degree. But there really is very many ways to go in, either sponsored by companies, or they're creating the T-levels now, which will replace A-levels from a technical perspective, and then you'll be able to go on and do more practical engineering. The choice is yours. So I think an engineer is somebody who makes a difference, and importantly, somebody who can be very creative and innovative. It's adventurous. I travel the whole world, and I have done in several of my jobs. It's also challenging. So there are lots of things to challenge you and to make you think really hard. Importantly, you get rewarded as well. So pay is generally very good for engineers, and there's a lot of demand. There's a big skills gap. So by saying there's a skills gap, we mean there are more jobs for engineers than there are engineers to fill the jobs. So it's a very good career choice. And importantly, could it be you? So thank you very much. Now over to any questions that you might have. So Chris, I don't know if you want to refresh everybody on how they do that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dawn. Great presentation, by the way. Would you mind coming out of your share screen so that people can see you?
Certainly.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, everybody, as I mentioned, if you have any questions, or if your pupils have any questions for Dawn, could you type them into the chat facility? And as I said, Dawn, read them out and then answer them. So there's normally a bit of a lull here. Oh, there we go.
Oh, thank you. Perfect. So I've been an engineer since the age of 17. So this is from Lingley House. And the question was, how many years have I been an engineer? And so many questions. Scooting through now. I'll start back at the top. So yes, I've been an engineer since I was 17. I applied for my sponsorship through the Air Force at that age. So it's 30 years now. I'm now 47. So yeah, very, very exciting. The next question is from Wath Central, and it's what inspires my ideas. So interestingly, in Merlin, we have a bunch of creative people who help us with the ideas. So they come up with hey, wow, why don't we have a roller coaster that goes underwater? And then my team sit with them and help them to figure out how technically or from an engineering perspective that could be done. So we sit and we brainstorm and we come up with exciting ideas, and then I have to go away and think about how that could actually be done. The next question is, what's the most exciting thing I've ever done? Oh, wow, that's a good question. And so it was when I was in the Air Force, and we were flying out near Las Vegas. So we were going to a military, so a United States Air Force base called Nellis, which is near Las Vegas. And on the way there, you fly over the Grand Canyon. So we flew low level over the Grand Canyon, and the C-130 aircraft has got a ramp and a door at the back. So the back end of the aircraft opens up. And if you go at a low enough level and the aircraft is depressurized, you can open it during flight, and you can put a harness on, and you can pretty much hang over the ramp at the back and look, which we did. And we went over the Grand Canyon, sort of hanging out the back of the aircraft looking at that. So that was very exciting. The next question is from Broom Barnes Primary. Who inspired me to become an engineer? My dad was actually a lorry mechanic. So although that didn't particularly inspire me to want to be a lorry mechanic, it allowed me to think that doing technical things was good. And my physics teacher at school, a chap called William Hannum, was an Air Force engineer. He was a hands-on engineer in the Air Force and fixed aircraft, and then left and became a physics teacher. So the sort of combination of my dad and what Mr. Hannum said about Royal Air Force engineering made me look into that. So yeah, sort of a mixture of two people. The next question is from Old Hall Primary. What do I enjoy most about my job? So I think it's the challenge and working with so many people. So I love when there's an issue to be figured out, and I have a team of engineers and we figure out the problem. I also like it when everything works, because that's pretty good. So you don't like things to break. So great to put the systems in place and have people delivering things that make a difference. And of course, here at Merlin, the difference that we make is putting smiles on people's faces and letting them enjoy themselves. The next question is from Alloway P7. What's my favorite thing about being an engineer? I think that's a little bit similar to the last question, but I love leading people. So I've always been an engineering manager. So I've never actually fixed anything myself. So never, picked up a spanner and fixed it myself. I'm always in charge of people who do that. And so I love working with people. I love enabling them to do their job, and also helping them to grow and improve and get promotion. So yeah, I like working with people. The next question is from Greenfields, and what is my favorite career moment? Okay, so aside from the hanging out the back of the aeroplane, which was obviously very exciting, my next favorite career moment was here in Merlin, and when we went to Hyde Park, and if you remember that big wooden roller coaster that I showed you on one of the pictures, as I say, the lift for that is 100 meters tall, and there was a problem with it, and we had to come up with a solution, and then we had to go on the roller coaster to listen to see if the noise that was previously apparent was now not apparent, and I've never been on such a high roller coaster before, so that was quite fun. Next question is from Wath Central. Who inspires me? To be fair, I'm inspired every day by people doing amazing things, and I think it's because I work with such a broad team across so many different countries, I find it really inspirational that different cultures will approach problems differently. And when I think that I'm stuck and we can't possibly find a solution to a problem, I'll maybe speak to some of the technicians in Japan, and they've got a really different approach, and they'll come up with a solution for me. So I find inspiration every day in the people that I work with. Why did I want to be an engineer? Okay, so this will sound a bit bad, because I know I talked about my dad, and he was a lorry mechanic, and I sort of thought that was good, but the reason that I actually ended up doing engineering at university was to attract sponsorship. It was the subject from my A-levels that were maths, physics, and chemistry. Engineering was the subject at university that attracted the most sponsorship, so you got paid to go to university, basically. So that's what made me properly think about engineering, which is probably a bad thing to say, but I think it's still true today. It's very, very rewarding from a financial perspective as well as an interest perspective. Do I like riding the roller coasters? From Stoke Minster Primary. Yes, I love riding the roller coasters. Occasionally I get scared, as I think everybody does, and I scream my head off, particularly on the launch coasters, but I do love them. The next question is from Kilbowie. How many people am I in charge of? Okay, so it varies depending on whether you mean directly in charge of or indirectly in charge of, which sounds a bit odd, but directly in charge of, I just have a team of 7, but indirectly I'm in charge of thousands. So there are several thousand engineers within Merlin, and they all report to me from a standards and process perspective. But obviously, I'm not in every single country every single day, so they have their a management structure in the country who looks after them as a line manager. The next question is from Woodfield, Year 3. What is my favourite installation? So it depends whether you mean from a technical sort of prowess perspective or whether from an excitement perspective. If it's an excitement perspective, then I have to say it would be the new roller coaster that we've got, or new last season, up at Alton Towers, the Wicker Man, because that is incredibly exciting. If you've not been on it, you should go. If it's from a technical prowess perspective, it's the London Eye, because that is just such a beautiful piece of engineering, and so well designed and really fabulous. The next question is from Year 4 Woodfield. What inspired me to be an engineer? I think I've covered that already, so I shall go to the next one. From Pitchtar, excuse me if I said that wrong, East Primary. How long does it take to plan and build a roller coaster? It depends on the design. So if it's a small roller coaster, for example, in a Legoland, it could be as quick as 2 years. If it's a bigger roller coaster, so something like Wicker Man, for example, the new wooden roller coaster at Alton Towers, that took 2.5 years. So, so it very much depends on the complexity and how easy the design is. Oh, here's a good question from Harton Primary, from Joshua. Did I fly the different aeroplanes? I flew in all of the airplanes that you can fly in and you can take passengers in. I do actually have a pilot's license, but not for the military fast jet and large aircraft, just for small sort of Cessna single propeller 2-seat aircraft. So a bit yes and a bit no. The next question is from Lisa Drummond, St Augustine's Primary School. And do I enjoy my job? Yes, I love my job. Thank you. And I have enjoyed every one of my engineering jobs for slightly different reasons. But the Air Force I absolutely loved, and I got to do tons of things that weren't just aircraft engineering. So, for example, I'm a great equestrian, so horse rider. I love show jumping, dressage. And in the Air Force, I could compete doing that as part of my job. That was fabulous. And really great, thrilling stuff in the Air Force. Loved the airport for different reasons because it was a new engineering challenge for me. And Merlin is just so new every day. There's just so many different things happening. It's just very exciting. Next question is from Holy Family Primary. Sorry, Holy Family Primary even. What's it like to be an engineer? It's both rewarding and challenging in equal measure, I think. And importantly, it's interesting. And I think that anybody who's in a job that is the same every day, it might not be so great, but being an engineer, it's different every day. And there's always a different challenge and lots of people to interact with. That's great. The next question is from Urchester Primary. What is my typical day? There isn't really a typical day, but I do either on-site reviews, so I might go to an installation to look at a particular technical issue they've got. So that could be one here in the UK, or it might be one out in Malaysia or in America, so there might be quite a bit of travel involved in that. Or I oftentimes will do conference calls with the engineers in the different parts of the world. So, for example, once a month I'll do a call at 8 o'clock in the morning to get all of the Asian geographies, so speak to all of the Asian technical directors, and then I'll do another one in the afternoon to speak to all of the American technical directors of the parks, and I'll do various meetings throughout the day various going and looking at installations, and also a little bit of theoretical stuff. So, for example, last week I rewrote one of the plan maintenance manuals just to make sure that we were doing our plan maintenance in the most optimal way at our theme parks on some of the rides. So yeah, so it's different every day. Next question is from Holloway, P7. What has been my favourite project? So my favourite project, I think, was building the Dubai Eye. So you'll have seen that there's an installation in Dubai, which is very similar to the one in London, but twice the size. So so London is some 130 meters high, Dubai is 200 and something, and what we did out there was effectively design this superstructure from the get-go, whereas the London Eye we took over. So that was great. So that was last year that we went through that. The next question is from Dollar Academy. Have I ever got to ride on a roller coaster I helped design? Yes, so there's been a couple that have been open since I've been in Merlin, and yes, so I guess I helped to design all of them, because within my team we do the liaison and the procurement, so we buy the roller coasters from the roller coaster manufacturers, and so yes, I have. Wicker Man, I guess, is the one in this country that you all know. Next question is from Pazana. Do I work in a team? Yes, I do work in a team. So I lead the engineering team within Merlin, but I also work within a broader team of directors in Merlin. So we have a safety director, a projects director. So yeah, different participation in teams at all sorts of levels. But yes, as an engineer, generally you're very much in teamwork all the time. The next question, to repeat, so I won't give that one. It's the same question again. Valkervie Primary, what's the favourite structure that I have worked on? I think we're doing a refurbishment of that large wooden roller coaster that I showed you a picture of in Heide Park in Germany, and that's quite interesting, because it's not creating a new roller coaster, it's making good for another 30 years an existing roller coaster, and that's been quite interesting because it's such a massive structure. Next question from year 2 and year 6, Woodfield. What was my favourite subject at school and why? I liked maths, and I think because I was good at it, which is a really terrible thing to say. So I liked that, but I also liked needlework. So when I was thinking about careers, something that I really thought about doing was becoming a dress designer, which is sort of creative and technical, sort of a bit at the same time. But it became really obvious to me that that was going to be a very difficult career path to follow, because there were so many people that could do it and were doing it, and you know, the chances of making good living at it were really quite slim, and I might just end up fixing other people's dresses, which wasn't what I wanted to do. So yeah, maths and needlework. Another question from Alloway P7. What projects or roller coasters have we made the most of? So we have 8 Legoland parks around the world, and we've just been authorised, and we're just building in New York, and we're just about to build in Korea as well. So within the Legoland parks, they're sort of mirror images of each other, if you like. So we tend to have a lot of the same roller coasters and rides in there. So we have lots of the Ninjago rides around the world. We have 6 of those, and we also have dragon coasters. We have 8 dragon coasters, which is a little mini roller coaster that looks like a dragon that you may well have seen. Next question from Holy Family Primary. Why did I pick these jobs? So the first one in the Air Force, it was because I could get sponsorship at university, and then Gatwick Airport, it was because I wanted a new engineering challenge, but I didn't want to go too far away from the things I knew about. So aircraft and aviation environment, I knew from the Air Force, so it felt like a good step to move to an airport. And then Merlin, I didn't pick, they picked me, they headhunted me, and I got a call saying, would I consider the job? So I didn't, to be honest, I didn't even know who Merlin Entertainment were before they rang me up. So yeah, they picked me. Another one from WAF Central. What has been my favourite creation? So I do think it is the Wicker Man up at Alton Towers. That's such an exciting wooden roller coaster, and it's so nice to bring an old traditional type of roller coaster back. So that was great. Another one from Year 4, Woodfield. Do I get to test the roller coasters? Yes, but an important technical note here: every single roller coaster before anybody goes on it, whether it's an engineer, member of staff, or the public, needs to have all of its maintenance checks done first. So you don't go on them as part of the maintenance checks. You do the maintenance checks first, and then you can go on them. Just a primary. What's my biggest failure? Great question. So I think that everybody who succeeds in stuff also fails at a whole bunch of stuff. And we had an issue with the E3D Sentry, so that aircraft I showed you with the big Smarty on the top, that's the radar. And the problem we had with that was in the engine, and there was a wiring issue, and we thought we'd found the problem, and we changed several of the engines, and then we realized that there was another wiring problem that we hadn't found, and there was basically a cable that was not seated correctly, and so that meant that we had to change 8 more engines, which took like 6 days, and people were working 24/7, so all the time. So it was a big problem, a big failure. Was I involved in Wicker Man? Yes, I was. I was part of the project team. I did all of the negotiations and discussions with Great Coasters Incorporated, who are the ride manufacturers. I also did all of the safety analysis for how we maintain it, and also put the technical team together. So yes, I was. Does engineering include building from Cromarsh Gifford? Yes, it does. And so civil engineering is related to buildings. There's also building services engineering. So civil engineering is the design and building of the buildings, and building services is maintaining the buildings, if you like. So yes, it is. Another one from Fazana: are there any projects that I would like to work on? I think something that I haven't done any of is tunneling. So I think if I ever moved from Merlin, it would be to do something that is maybe involved with bridges or transport and tunneling. So yeah, haven't done that. From another one from Merchester Primary: what type of engineering did I do on the planes? So I covered all of the engineering of the aircraft. So I had the propulsion, electrical, avionics, and structural people reporting into me. So that literally is all of the aircraft and the aircraft systems. Another one from Woodfield: did I work closely with the Red Arrows? Yes, I was part of their design authority. So I looked after aircraft structures, and part of the program that we run during the time that I did that was replacing all of the tailplanes of the aircraft. So if you can imagine, when aircraft are flying in formation, the one that's at the front is having all the normal air flowing over the aircraft and getting what we call the normal amount of fatigue. So that's wear, if you like, wear and tear. The aircraft that are flying behind that front aircraft are getting turbulent airflow, and they're also, because the front aircraft is flying straight and level, or trying to be straight and level, the ones behind it will be making minor adjustments all the time to stay in the right position, and that caused an increased amount of fatigue or wear and tear on the tailplanes of the aircraft. So we had a big program to understand what that was like, and how quickly we needed to change out those aircraft tailplanes. Another question from Valkyrie Primary: why did I want to join the RAF? Because it gave me the most sponsorship at university, which is probably a bad thing to say, but yeah, they sponsored me for sort of £38,000 to go to university, which at the time was significantly more than any other company would have done. Another question from Water Central. Layla would like to know, how long does it normally take to create a roller coaster? Depends on the type of roller coaster, but between 1.5 to sort of 2.5, 3 years. So it's a repeat question. Bridge of Allen Primary: repeat question, favourite subject of school. An interesting one from Otterbourne Primary: did I face any obstacles as a female succeeding in industry? Yes, I think it's fair to say that I did, and there were things like a little bit of inappropriate behavior from people sometimes, but the most significant thing for me was a lack of acceptance that I could be a good engineer. So every time I went to a new job in the Air Force in particular, you move jobs every 2 years. And every time I started in a new job, I had to prove myself and prove that I was a good enough engineer. Whereas a fellow colleague who was a guy, they'd immediately assumed that they could do the engineering. So constantly having to prove myself was always very difficult. The next question is from Fazana. What was the hardest project? We've recently done some structural improvements on the London Eye. Because that's open nearly all the year round, it's just closed this week for maintenance. It's very difficult to plan those projects in, and because of the scale of the structure, that's quite difficult to figure out how you're going to do it and how you're going to gain the access, because of course it's right on the South Bank on the Thames there, so difficult to get large cranes and things in and around it. Those are all repeat questions. Another one from Frazana. What is my next project? We're rolling out a project called Lego Movie World at all of the Lego parks, and the next one, or the first one, is about to open in Florida for next season. So that's what we're currently working on, and that's a flying theatre. So you're sat inside a sort of a bank of seats, and you go into a screen and you fly around. So very exciting. It's a repeat question. Here's a question from Pitcher East Primary. How do the roller coaster cars stay on the tracks? So it's with something called an upstop wheel. So effectively, the roller coaster track is like a tube of metal, so a round piece of metal, and they have wheels at the top, at the side, and also at the bottom. So effectively, whether you go upside down or sideways, the car is held on the track. And of course, they have those on both sides, which stops it falling off. So there you go. Year 4 Woodfield. Have I ever created anything myself, like a new invention? No. So I've not invented anything myself. Sorry about that. So one from Harton, Year 6. How many attractions have I worked on in total? So I do the engineering governance for all of our attractions. So that's we buy and sell some every now and again, but currently it's 129. Just a primary, what's the hardest problem that I faced? To be honest, it wasn't necessarily a problem, it was a decision, and that was to leave the Royal Air Force, because I absolutely loved the job, but the prospects of promotion were diminishing because they were cutting down the size of the military. So I wanted to progress further more quickly, so I chose to leave, and that was really difficult. One from Cromarsh Gifford. How long does it take to become an engineer? So it depends which route you want to go for. If you want to leave school at 16 and become an apprentice, then you can go straight from school into engineering, and you will study at the same time as doing the job. So you'll effectively become an engineer almost overnight, but it will take you potentially 3 years to get your formal qualification until you're allowed to work on your own without direct supervision. The route that I took was through university. So these days you need to do a Master's of Engineering degree, which is potentially 4 years long, and then you would come out as a qualified engineer with an engineering degree. You would then need, I think, in your first jobs, although you are a qualified engineer, you're not hugely productive immediately, because you have to learn a little bit more about the job you're doing. So apprentices, I think, become productive more quickly than engineers with degrees. Here's one from Harton Primary. Do I have to help people if there are any problems with the rides? So not the day-to-day problems, but if there's a problem that they haven't seen before, or that they need technical or engineering guidance on, then that's when they will give me a call. One from West Central. Harvey would like to know, what's the biggest aircraft I have designed or worked on? So I didn't design it, but it was the C-17 Globemaster, which is the large mover of logistics in the Air Force, and that's enormous. It's great. One from Fazana. What was the easiest project? No projects are easy. Everything always has a slight challenge to it. So yeah, difficult to say. They all have their own problems. One from Uxenden 2A, how many hours do I work each week? Well, so at the start of your career, you will pretty much work the hours that are set, 40-hour normal standard working week. I obviously cover 4 continents, so time differences are quite difficult. So I do end up working quite long days, but I'm a bit of a workaholic and I choose to do that. So I wouldn't like to even guess how many hours I work. It's a lot, but a lot of it's through choice. One from Harton Primary, how do you actually make roller coasters? So in Merlin, we don't make them. We liaise with rider manufacturers who will make them on our behalf and design them to our specification, and then we install them. So depending on what it's made of will depend on how you make it. So if it's steel, it might be pressed or rolled steel. If it's a tubular steel track, if it's wood, it will either just be normal planed wood, so cut into sections, or you can sometimes have laminated wood. So for example, the one in Hyder Park we're just installing is laminated wood, so it's slices of wood on top of each other, then cut together in the right shape so that it's got better bending propensity. One from Valley View, Jasmine, what's the tallest roller coaster you've worked on? That's the one in Hyder Park where it's over 100 meters. Nether Third Primary, did I grow up with engineers in my family? So my father was a car mechanic, so a lorry mechanic. So that made me feel that technical and engineering wasn't a problem for me, or didn't even make me think it was an issue for a woman to do it. So yes, I did. But I think these days you don't even need to know an engineer in your family to want to become an engineer. Just link in with lots of people. So Women's Engineering Society, which I'm president of, will help to set you on your way, make sure you understand about engineering or answer any questions you have. And there are lots of other companies out there that will also do that. So don't worry if you don't have an engineer in your family and you want to know more about it. There's tons of stuff on the internet and chat rooms and things. Tomorrow's Engineer is another good website. Another one from Woodfield Primary, what part of your career did you prefer the most and why? I like what I'm currently doing, and that's because when I was in the Air Force, I did a job for a short while where I was the support for the chief engineer of the Air Force, so the most senior engineer in the Air Force. And when I did that job in my early 20s, I wanted to become the chief engineer of the Air Force as it was. When it became apparent through the reconstruction of the Air Force that was never going to happen, the reason I left the Air Force was to try and find a job where I would be the chief engineer. And of course, here at Merlin, I am the chief engineer. So this is my favorite job. I've already answered that. So one from Merchester Primary, what's the most responsibility I've had? So in the Air Force, you used to get the capability to sign an aircraft as fit to fly with a fault or a problem, which in civil aviation, nobody's able to do that, whereas in the military you are. So for example, if there's an aircraft and you're in a war zone in Afghanistan and there's a problem with one of the wings or one of the engines or whatever, I could sign that the aircraft could fly with that problem. And that was quite a lot of responsibility, especially if you made the wrong decision. Another one from Holy Family Primary, what job would I have chosen if I wasn't an engineer? I would have been a dressmaker. One from Crowmarsh Gifford, how old do you have to be an engineer? You can start an apprenticeship at the age of 16. So yeah, you could do it immediately from school if you wish to. One from Ballycurie Primary, what primary school did I go to? So I lived in Kent when I was young, and I went to Maginford Primary. I have no idea if it still exists. One from Lingy House. Can I email the PowerPoint? Yes, I'll email Chris the PowerPoint. One from Holy Family, what was it like in the working for the Air Force? Amazing, really good. Got to travel the world, got fantastic training, got to work on amazing pieces of equipment. In fact, I think there are a couple of engineering adverts for the Air Force on TV at the moment. And yes, it's just as exciting and fabulous as those adverts suggest. So yeah, it's brilliant. One from Otterbourne Primary, what country is the most advanced with their engineering? So there are several countries that are all on about a par, I think. So England, the United Kingdom, the United States, Germany, Denmark actually is very good as well. when I look at our installations around the world, as Merlin Entertainment, so United Kingdom sort of PLC, we have to uplift standards in some geographies. So we set a higher standard than they would set themselves in sort of Asia, China, that sort of thing. Just a primary, what country is my favourite to work in? I love it over here in the UK, but I do like visiting other countries, and in particular, it's great to go around the States just because it's so diverse and it's such large geography. So I like that. Pitch to East Primary. How many engineers are involved in making one roller coaster? Hundreds. So there's not just all the people within Merlin, there's all the people within the ride designers, and then the support engineers that make the components, so hundreds. Broome Barnes Primary. Do I get to go on the finished designs? Yes, I do. Urchester Primary, what's my biggest success? Gosh, good question. I think if I do manage to deliver the engineering governance for Merlin Entertainment and try and raise the standards of the industry. So I've just created a new apprenticeship scheme and a new type of engineering called leisure and entertainment engineering, which didn't exist before. And it was only when I came into Merlin and I realized that there was all of this exciting engineering going on, and there was no name for it. You know, everyone has heard of a mechanical engineer or electrical or aeronautical, but nobody had heard of the sort of engineering that I was now doing. So created leisure and entertainment engineering apprentice standard, and I'm now working with the Department for Education, looking at T-levels and making sure that there's a T-level for leisure and entertainment engineering as well. So I think that's my biggest success. One from Wath Central. What university did I go to? I went to Bath University. And what's it like being an engineer? It's great. It's really exciting. One from Netherland Primary. How did you use wood and fire to make the Wicker Man roller coaster? Well, see, I don't know if I can tell you because that's a bit of a trade secret, but suffice to say that all that looks like fire isn't necessarily fire. So there might be some optical illusion in there. One from Urchester Primary. Oh, I've had that one already. Trinity C of E. How easy is it to balance your work life with your social life? It is easy. As I say, I choose to work hard because I'm very keen to get on. So I have a great social life and a great work life as well. I don't actually have any children. I wasn't fortunate enough to be able to have a family. So I think that probably helps me to make sure that I get my work-life balance, because I haven't got the demands of having children. One from Valley View, from Alicia. Do you have to wear safety gear every day? No, I don't have to wear safety gear every day, only when I go into a workshop where dangerous works are being carried out. And then I might need work boots, gloves perhaps, and a high-vis jacket. If I go onto a construction site, then obviously I need a hard hat, high-vis, work boots, gloves, and I have to be wearing trousers as well, in case there's any sort of chemicals or anything that splash on your skin. So no, not every day by any stretch of the imagination. Probably once or twice a month, to be honest. It's a repeat question. So is that. Oh, here's a good question. So this is one from Kilbowie, P5. Is it stressful being in charge of so many people and sites? In some ways it can be, particularly if there are lots of challenges on at a time, but I like to think of it as a good form of stress, because I like helping people to succeed in their jobs, and I like making sure that everything is done correctly and to a good standard. So it is stress, but in a good way. There's a repeat question. So that one. One from Otterbourne Primary. Is there anything that I wish I'd been involved with? I wish I'd still been in the Air Force for the centenary year, which was last year. So that would have been fabulous. But nicely now, I'm the president of the Women's Engineering Society, and it's our centenary year this year, so I get to be involved in one centenary. One from Balcurie Primary. What secondary school did I go to? I went to a school called Bedgebury Park, which has now unfortunately shut. So yeah. One from Urchester Primary, what difficulties have I faced? I talked previously about some of the challenges of always having to prove myself. I think it's probably worth mentioning something called the imposter syndrome as well. And I think as a girl working in quite a male environment, particularly in my early career years, I suffered with something called the imposter syndrome, which is where you're very qualified to do your job, you're actually very good at your job, everybody else thinks you're great at your job, but you personally are always worried that somebody's going to go, hey, she shouldn't be doing that job. And so you end up working really, really hard to try and prove every single day that you should be in the job you're in. So yeah, difficult. Okay, I think we're coming to the end now as people are dropping off. So one from Holy Family Primary, what subjects did I take at high school? So my A-levels were maths, physics and chemistry. One from Peter East Primary, have I ever wanted to give up on any projects and what kept me going? Yes, you do occasionally get frustrations, and it could be things going wrong and the project running over time. It could be funding being cut and you have to always find a way to work within the new budget. But what kept me going was the need to succeed and always wanting to find a solution. There's another one about work-life balance. A question from Trinity C of E from Rufus. Is it hard having to travel so much, and how frequently do I travel? So I'm out of the country at least 1 week every month. And so for example, this week I'm traveling, although I'm in the country, I'm traveling, I'm down in Poole today, I'm up at Alton Towers tomorrow, I'm at Windsor on Thursday, and then in London on Friday. So yeah, I do travel quite a lot, but I enjoy traveling. Another question about the fire on Wicker Man. Again, it's a trade secret, I can't tell you, but remember optical illusion. One from Otterbourne Primary, would I like to go into space engineering? Yes, I think that would be hugely exciting. It's not something that I'm into yet. I guess the closest we've got is Galactica, which is the virtual reality on the air coaster at Alton Towers, which you can pretend to go into space onto. I've had that question already. That one too. One from Stoke Minster Primary, have I entered any engineering competitions? And if so, what place did I come? No, I haven't entered any competitions, but I have won prizes for engineering, and that wasn't for inventing or making anything. It was actually for, it was an IMechE prize called the Graham Bryce Award, which was for inspiring future engineers. So I guess doing more of what I'm doing today. Already have that one. Okay. Chris, conscious that that we're running up against our last couple of minutes now, and most of these are repeat questions.
Yeah.
Well, there is one here actually I'll answer that's not a repeat question. One from Fasano. So how many female engineers do I work with? Currently, I have a few. In most of the geographies, I have 1 or 2 female engineers. The most that I've ever worked with was the team at Gatwick Airport, and my immediate team below me, I hired 3 female engineering managers. So that was the most female engineers that I'd had working directly for me, which was great. But generally, women in engineering is at 15% at the moment, universally, so across all the United Kingdom. And my intent is to get that up to 30% by 2030. So we need more girls, and we're great at it. So please apply. Chris.
Sorry, I muted myself then, and I forgot I muted it. So yeah. So I think we're going to have to call it a day now, everybody. So thank you all very much, and a huge thanks to Dawn. As many schools have commented, it was a fabulous presentation, some great questions and some wonderful answers as well. So thank you all very much. The quickest way to leave the presentation is to put your cursor towards the bottom of the screen, and on the right hand side you'll see leave meeting, and I think in your case, Dawn, you'll see end meeting. So if everyone presses on that, they will lead the meeting. Dawn, could you send me your presentation, and any schools that want it, they can I can email on to them?
Yes, of course.
Wonderful. Okay, so thank you very much, everybody, and Thank you again, Dawn. It's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.